Yeah, a bit beaten and bruised. We made a little bit of a comeback in the late game. The early game was rough. That game script getting out of hand early really kind of killed us with Marlon Mack prop, as well as I guess the Nyheim Hines, although I don't know what happened there. Just looking at DFS Twitter, it sounds like a lot of people got burned on Hines yesterday. I think he had something like 4 snaps, so that was just really weird. I don't think anyone saw that coming. So the morning we got burned a little bit, and then not bad in the afternoon game, the late game. Went 2 for 2. We should have gone 2 and 2. We should have gone 3 and 1. We had the Nick Vannett one, and then those words you never want to hear from Joe Buck as an over better is flag on the play, and the over got called back. So really the only bet I would probably take back in that game was the Chris Carson one. Probably not great process there. I don't really like that one looking back. And like I said yesterday, the only reason I bet it is because it went down to 70.5. It was higher all week, and then it went down to 70.5, and I got suckered in. But we killed the monkey knife fight pick, so overall a bit of a profitable day, but hoping to do better today for sure. Yeah. Yeah, this is the third week in a row we bet the exact same one, a little lower this week, but again, just not adjusting the books for some reason. So his career high is 15 completions, and really, looking at it, his career completions, 13, 14, 15, 13, 14, 12, 14, and he's being given a line of 15.5. I really don't get it. I haven't got it the last few weeks. We've cleaned up on this prop the last few weeks. So going to go back to the well. I mean, one of these days he is going to get 16 completions. There's no doubt about it. It might be today, but just can't really avoid the value on this line. When he met the Chargers a couple weeks back, completed just 54.5% of his passes. So, he is throwing a bit, but, he's not the most accurate guy. And then, of course, there is the game pace concerns, which we'll get a little bit more into. But I just don't really see how you can avoid this. I know that some places this bet had been at 16.5, which is ridiculous. We got it at 15.5 late last night, which is fine. A little bit of a juice at minus 130. But especially at home, I think the Ravens are going to be running as much as they have been this last month or so. And I don't know. Can you think of any reason, Pete, why he would ever suddenly see his completion spike in this matchup? Okay. You hearing me all right, though? Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Yeah, you bet. You bet. So, yeah, we're taking the Lamar under 15.5. Another pick we like in this one is Mark Andrews. A little bit of a volatile pick here, as he's certainly capable of putting up a goose egg in this one. But the rookie, overall, his last 6 weeks, he's been well clear of this mark of 22.5, which we're hitting the over on. 74 yards, 47 yards, 0 yards, and that's his floor, to be fair, just to be aware of that. But then 31 yards, 83 versus these Chargers a couple weeks ago, who are pretty good against tight ends. Andrews was able to get loose in that one, and then 54 yards to cap off the season last week. I think that's pretty good. Again, a bit of a risky pick here just because we know his floor is a bit dangerous. But overall, that average is fantastic. Encouraging to see that nice matchup 2 weeks ago against the Chargers. He does sort of, been losing some volume a little bit of late, but again, just sort of the same idea with Nick Vannett yesterday and Mike Davis receiving yesterday. Not a phenomenal spot for him, but the number's just too low, 22.5 to ignore. A couple other guys to talk about that are interesting in this one. I mean, the game pace here is a huge factor. Baltimore really just, they run the ball and they really limit the amount of opportunities for the opponents. So, that could be trouble for the Chargers playmakers. The Ravens have allowed the fewest plays per game to opponents over the last 3 weeks, and I think they're second on the year, about 53 plays. How are we doing now there, Pete? Are you got some audio back? I cannot hear you, no. I heard you before. How's your sign language? Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. So our other bet on this one is, what do we got here? We've got 4. So that was our first 3 picks. We've got Lamar Miller, Phillip Rivers, and then another one we're looking at here is one of the Williams' brothers. I think both are fairly reasonable on the under. We ended up going with Tyrell Williams, the under on him. And I'm just going to bring up some stats on him here. So we're going under 28.5 on Tyrell Williams, minus 135. I think Mike Williams is probably going to get the treatment from Jimmy Smith on the outside. And his total's a little bit higher at about 40.5. Williams is a little lower, 28.5. But yeah, ever since, with Keenan Allen in the lineup, Tyrell Williams, he doesn't see the volume. He's a guy who could obviously break out a deep threat at any time, really. But against this Baltimore secondary, the chances of that I like a lot less. So his yardage totals in the last 4 games with Keenan Allen played 22, 14, 14, 12, and 23, all well under our mark of 28.5. And, he hasn't passed 23 yards since, I think I may have heard you come back on there, Pete. Yeah. The usage is trending down as Mike Williams has really seen his targets kind of start to beef up a little bit. And just 10 targets for Tyrell Williams in Mike Williams' last 4 games with Allen healthy as well. And then Baltimore, of course, that awesome pass defense. The 6th lowest yards per catch, so their efficiency is great. And I believe they're also ranked 3rd in receptions allowed to wide receivers. I think Williams is a nice play there. As for the rest, I really wanted to pound a lot of Baltimore unders as well, just kind of a correlation play on the Lamar Jackson under. But all those unders are so juiced. The Michael Crabtree under is like, minus 170 or something like that. The John Brown over is something similar. So, I like those plays just from kind of a win-loss perspective, but not a ton of value there, I don't think. Just so much juice on those bets. So those are our plays on this one. I think that there are some other interesting ones if you want to mess around and get a bit more action. Kenneth Dixon is really interesting. He out-touched Melvin Gordon last week. Of course, Gordon's banged up. He's still banged up. I know he practiced in full this week, but sorry, not Melvin Gordon. I got my teams confused there. But yeah, Kenneth Dixon out-touched Gus the Bus last week, I should say. I wrote that wrong in my sheet here. But he did out-touch Gus Edwards last week for the first time. So I think he may have forced this into a bit of a timeshare. His lines are 40.5 on the rush and 10.5 on the receptions for Kenneth Dixon. Those are both pretty intriguing. The 2 weeks ago, he did 8 for 20 rushing against the Chargers, which isn't amazing, but eight carries is certainly encouraging. And then he had 2 receptions for 20 yards against the Chargers. So I think his role is growing a little bit. That intrigues me. I saw Austin Eckler is going to be active. I haven't seen any props on him, but keep an eye on those if anything pops up, because I think that might be an interesting one. I think Melvin Gordon's role might be a little bit limited. He hasn't had many touches at all over the last 5-6 weeks. I don't think he's had more than 15 or 16 over the last 5-6 weeks. And then Baltimore obviously fierce against the run, third fewest rushing yards in the league. And of course, that game pace, they just don't allow attempts. They've only allowed the third fewest rushing attempts over the last 3 games, as Baltimore really sort of chokes the life out of their opponents. How you doing over there, Pete?
I'm doing good. I can hear you. They can hear you. I just don't, for some reason. I think I have my default audio going, so it's probably not as good. But can you guys hear me now? I think they should be able to hear me.
I got you. Yeah, definitely a bit of a loss in quality. It sounds like I went away and I came back.
Yep, you're back. So, I appreciate you guys still working out the kinks here. All right, let's keep plowing forward here. Now I got my bearings. Is there anything else with the Ravens Chargers you want to touch on, or do you want to move over to Eagles Bears?
I think we touched on most of it. I think, Melvin Gordon is interesting. I'd probably lean the under there. The problem there is that the line is so low.
Yeah, it looks like 55.5 rushing yards for Melvin.
Yeah. So, and Sean Corner's projecting 59.2 yards, and that seems very reasonable despite the tough matchup and despite the game pace concerns. So, if I was going to bet that one, I'd probably bet the under, but, it's not a phenomenal bet. Keenan Allen's really interesting. He had 58 yards against the Ravens a couple weeks ago, which isn't amazing, but if Baltimore is vulnerable in one area, it's sort of in the middle of the field there, the kind of slot and tight end. No props, unfortunately, for Antonio Gates. I would have played a Gates over had there been one. He had 3 catches versus the Ravens a couple weeks ago. So Keenan Allen might be an interesting play. The Ravens are favored in this one, so the Chargers might have to be passing a little bit, and they are a bit vulnerable to slot. Jarvis Landry had over 100 last week against them, so if you're feeling gambly, I think the over is a reasonable play there, although that line may have been rising as well. Let's have a look at that one.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pull up here kind of 2 injury notes and stuff to monitor as far as both Keenan and Melvin. Silva had tweeted out earlier today, there was a Ravens beat writer that said Tavon Young, who's been the slot corner for the Ravens, is dealing with a groin injury right now, and that's where Keenan is going to be running the majority of the routes. So he might be getting a backup slot corner, which would obviously boost his matchup. And then a thing on Melvin, I was listening to the Dr. Chow podcast, and of course they removed Melvin from the injury report, which I think is giving a lot of people optimism. But Dr. Chow said, obviously he's going to play, but his ability to cut is really in question. He has both the brace on the knee and coming off the high ankle sprain. So I think that's why you might need to tread lightly there. But as far as the Keenan, I think this matchup is starting to look really good for him. What do you think about that 77.5 number? I mean, it's a pretty big number, but the volume should be there.
It is. So 77.5 is a bit high. I'm seeing, just looking on 5 dimes right now, 72.5.
Okay.
And not only that, but plus 100 at 72.5. So I think there's some value there. It's a bit scary for sure. I mean, that, Baltimore is a little bit weak in that department. And you mentioned the backup slot back there, or the backup slot cornerback there. So yeah, I like the over there. It's plus 100. If you can get plus odds at the 72.5. has come.
Ben Battle in the chat makes a good point about maybe avoiding the receiving yards for Keenan and getting your exposure through the receptions. They have it, I'm seeing, at 5.5. Although the juice is pretty high on Bovada. It's up to -150, so a lot of action on the over 5.5 right now, probably as that report came out.
Yeah, it looks like BetOnline still has that, at least in the Fantasy Labs prop tool, at -130 on the 5.5.
Okay.
You said -150 at Bovada, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to, I like that play. I like that play for sure. Get the better odds for sure if you can. I think that Keenan has a pretty reasonable shot at hitting that, and I agree with Ben. I think if you're going to play that, I think the receptions is a little bit, lower variance route on that. Very much, I think 6 catches, kind of 60 yards is pretty reasonable for Keenan Allen. That makes a lot of sense. So, I like that one. Wouldn't make a big play on it at all, but if you want a bit of action, I think that's a nice route to go.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing, I know we wrote up 24.5 receiving yards for Mike Andrews. I assume if he hits that, it would be with 2 to 3 receptions. Do you have a read on 2 receptions? Do you like the over there?
Let me have a quick look here.
Yeah, so it's -130 on Bovada for Mark Andrews receptions. It seems like that would be correlated pretty decently with the over on the 24.5.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. If you've got one bet down already, I probably wouldn't double down on that one. A little too much variance. But yeah, let's look at this. So targets over the last 3 weeks: 4, 2, and 5. So over the last 5 weeks, he's hit 2 in 4 of 5 games, and then he had a goose egg against Kansas City. So yeah, I think 2 is pretty good. I think we're almost sort of free rolling on that pick. Very unlikely that he has only the 1 reception. I shouldn't say very unlikely, but fairly unlikely he has the 1 reception. We do know his floor is 0. But yeah, I feel like 2 is sort of free rolling a little bit. I like that because I doubt he gets 1 reception. 2 probably seems like the most likely outcome. So we're kind of pushing on that one and then free rolling to get that 3rd, hopefully, against the Chargers. So yeah, I think that's a solid play as well. Although I wouldn't recommend double dipping on that one. Probably one or the other, whichever one you like best.
Yeah, get your exposure with the yards. Okay, why don't we hop over to this second game, Eagles versus the Bears. The article you guys wrote up yesterday is talking about the Tariq Cohen receiving prop. Why don't we start there?
Sure. Cohen, always a little bit scary chasing these wide receiver props, as we saw with Nyheim Hines yesterday. I mean, everything looks lined up just perfectly for us, and sometimes that happens with the wide receiver or the running back receiving props. That said, lots of good flags here. Cohen averaging 45.3 receiving yards per game on the season, and just a phenomenal matchup. The Eagles allowing 2nd most targets to opposing running backs, 2nd most receptions, and the 6th most yards at 52.8 yards per game they're giving up against opposing running backs. So between just looking at those averages, lots to like there. They've yielded 25 or more yards to 14 different running backs on the season. The Eagles have, including the immortal Wayne Gallman and Alfred Blue as well, got 26 yards. So 33.5 for Tariq Cohen certainly seems well within his range of outcomes. Again, always a little bit risky with these running back props, a little bit of variance on these ones. Cohen's probably going to smash this or do 16 yards. I'm a little bit scared about the spread on this one, about a touchdown favor for the Bears, so they may not have the urgency that is needed to get this prop. But Philly, exploitable at all levels of the defense pretty much, and running back receptions is one of them for sure. So that's one of the ones I like. Another one I'm looking at here, and this is, we were talking yesterday about how much fun it is to play the unders on stars. So that's what we're doing here with Zach Ertz. Under 62.5 receiving yards for Zach Ertz. And I really think that Vic Fangio is going to give a lot of attention to Ertz. They've been elite against tight ends, the Bears have. Mentioned in my article that if Ertz does eclipse 43 yards against the Bears, he'll be the first guy to do it all season long. They've been excellent against tight ends all year, and particularly at home. They haven't faced anyone of Ertz's ilk for sure. But still, I think there's going to be tons of attention on him. And there's only been one tight end to go over even 40 or even 50 yards against the Bears all year, and that was George Kittle, who's obviously as good as it gets. And even he only put up 64 yards, just 12 yards clear of this line we're playing. So, and then the last factor on this one, Ertz's volume really kind of inconsistent and spiky with Foles under center. He had the one huge game, I think 2 weeks back, but other than that, he's been held to 40 yards or under in 3 of his past 4. And, I really think that the way to attack the Bears' reputation precedes them a little bit. They're not that great against wide receivers. I think they only rank something like 17th, 18th in the league when it comes to yards allowed to wide receivers. So I sort of see an Alshon Jeffrey possibly kind of revenge game happening here. And I think Jeffrey's going to have single coverage most of the day. So I think that's going to be the way they try to move the ball. And, of course, Darren Sproles is a guy that will probably see some play in this game. I think we're going to go under on the Zach Ertz on that one. I like that play quite a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to check in on some of Sean Corner, our friend at the Action Network, his projections. He has Ertz projected for just under 60 yards, so he does like that prop. Not a smash, but still likes it. And then on Cohen, too, yeah, he had Cohen at 42.1 receiving yards, so a little more cushion there as well. So not necessarily like smash plays, but definitely I think you're on the right side if you're taking the over on Cohen and the under on Ertz. And yeah, we talked about that last week with the stars like Ertz. You're probably getting a few yards of value just because people want to smash those overs. Although I will say, looking at the juice on Bovada, that's creeped up to minus 130, so you can definitely tell some action has been coming in on the under, and they've adjusted there because you can get even odds on the over right now. So maybe the pendulum has swung back to people being okay going with the under here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Shop around, I think, if you want to get that. You mentioned minus 130 at Bovada. I'm still seeing minus 120 at Sportsbook. And let me have a quick look at 5 Dimes here. 5 Dimes. So they brought the yardage down to 60.5, and the under is at minus 125. So, yeah, I don't like that as much. But that one's not too bad. Maybe another little pivot here is 110. That might be another little correlation play on that if we're thinking that Ertz is going to get double teamed.
Yep.
19.5 is a pretty low threshold for Goddard there, and he's been pretty involved. So that might be a nice little correlation play there as well.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Bovada is offering much for Goddard, but did you say there was some action on 5 Dimes for it?
5 Dimes. That's the only place I've seen it. Not on BetOnline or MyBookie or anything yet. So just 5 Dimes if you're there, I think it is maybe worth a little bit of a punt.
Yeah, I'm definitely using him in DFS. He's a really nice price there if you want to fade Ertz and get to that. Also, probably a good pivot too if you're behind in some of your DFS lineups. I had a decent amount of Nyheim Hines and needed to get freaky with some of these late swaps. So yeah, I like Goddard there as a potential way to get contrarian.
For sure.
Is there anything else on? We mentioned if we think that Ertz gets double teamed, and then, we obviously just mentioned Goddard, but from what I've read, people kind of also like the matchups for Aguilar and Alshon. Any interest in those receiving or reception props?
Yeah, I think Alshon's a decent play for sure. Again, as we mentioned, the Bears not great against wide receivers. I think Alshon probably, he's been the most consistent target for sure. Not only the most in his first 3 weeks as an Eagle, playing on lots of snaps, 71%, 60%, 48% of snaps. And then the last 4 weeks, he's disappeared. Snap counts of snap percentages, 38%, 34%, 35%, and then back up to 56% last week. But Aguilar seems to have taken over that role. So I'm going to play the under on Golden Tate there. He went 78 or 7.8 targets over that stretch, and then to 4.3 targets over the last few games. Aguilar's a decent play too. I think maybe a little bit of a over there is worth a look. I'm probably not going to play that one, but I think it's fine. And then the last one I wanted to mention for this game, I haven't tweeted this one out yet, but I did lock this play in about an hour ago. Allen Robinson over 4 receptions. He didn't play last week, but it sounds like he's all systems go. His last 4 games healthy, he's had reception totals of 5, 5, 3, and 6. And a nice little bonus here. I haven't seen the update on Trey Burton, but he was a late guy to show up on the injury report last night with a groin or a hamstring, I believe it was, which is never a good sign the night before a game.
Yeah, that seems. It seems like that he's legit questionable to play, so that could definitely funnel more to Robinson. And speaking of that, do you have any thoughts on? I don't know if anyone will offer Shaheen props, but he would definitely probably see a couple more looks as well. Yeah,
I haven't seen anything on him. I'll take a quick look here, but for a guy like that who's kind of a part-time player, I don't see anything. If you do see anything, for sure, feel free to have a little punt there. But I think that even if a couple more targets for Allen Robinson, who's already had a pretty nice little share going, I think that's a really good look for him. Over 4 receptions. Again, it almost sort of feels like a bit of a free roll play, similar to the one we talked about.
Do you like so you like the receptions more than the yardage for 55.5? My only thought is, Allen Robinson has a pretty big ADOT, a lot of those targets coming down the field, in just the way they spread the ball around. I might feel a little bit better about him getting the over on the yardage than the receptions. Yeah,
I think that's totally fair. I don't see a huge difference between the two bets. I think whatever you're a bit more comfortable with. And to me, I always, when it's close like this, I'm going to lean towards the volume and not the efficiency. So the volume has been there for him. So I'm just going to bet on that and not have to worry about him, breaking tackles and stuff like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think there's a big difference between the two bets here. I think both are pretty similar. So it's a matter of whatever you feel more comfortable with. I'm going to go with the volume on this one and just try to get to those four receptions and free roll from there.
Yeah, and I would say too, at least on Bovada, the over on the 55.5 receiving yards is -125, whereas on the receptions it's -105. So definitely, if you like those equally, definitely take the receptions because you're getting a better price there. All right, man. I think we're getting close to wrapping up here before lock. Are there any more final plays you'd like to give out here?
I was considering playing the Foles under QBs, the under TD, 1.5 TDs for him. The under is paying -155, so not a ton of value there. But I think under 1.5 TDs is a pretty reasonable outcome for him. So I might make a little play on that. But the yards is 250.5. Gun to my head, probably playing the under there.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. He's such a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where he either looks.
No, I agree with you there. It's I think he's probably going to finish right around that area, so I don't want to mess with it too much.
Yep. Yeah. So I know that, like you mentioned, the legend of Foles. All right. For
sure. And I've got Bears. I've got Philly +6 in this one on the spread. So I'm kind of pulling for the Eagles for some reason, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining us. Sorry again for the technical difficulties. Still trying to kind of get familiar with the whole live streaming setup and all the tech stuff. So thanks for bearing with us. And
thanks, guys.
As always, you guys check out bettheprop.com. Lots of articles up there. Thanks to Ben Battle for hopping in the chat. He's been doing some articles up there that have been great as well. And I know I'm going to be traveling next week, but I think you're going to be doing a live stream on the Bet the Prop YouTube. You'll keep this going, right, for divisional weekend?
For sure, yeah. I think Ben and I are going to do a stream on Saturday, and then Matt Friedman from Action Network has been offered up his services on Sunday, so hopefully we're going to chat with him about this time next Sunday.
Perfect, yeah. So you guys will, it sounds like we'll keep the lock shows going throughout the playoffs, and then maybe you and I can circle back for championship weekend.
Sounds good, Pete. Perfect, man. I appreciate the time on the air with you, and looking forward to a profitable day today. Thanks, man.
Yep. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Hit the subscribe button if you guys want to get notified for future other shows and episodes, some DFS content on the channel as well. All right, guys. Good luck, and let's hit these unders.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good luck. Have a good one.